Okay, so today we're going to be talking about linear inequalities. So the inequalities that you guys have been exposed to before have just been one variable inequality. So for example, I might say like x is greater than or equal to 5. And you guys would put this on just a regular number line. And you would put it shaded in circle and you would graph greater than, and it would look something like this. This is a one variable inequality. It just has one variable and you would shade or move whichever direction you need. So we are going to start talking about equations that involve two variables. For example, y is greater than or equal to x plus 2. Now, whenever you have more than one variable, your coordinate or your number lines have to kind of go with that. So with two variables, you need a coordinate plane that has an x and a y axis. Okay, so you're going to graph these just like this was an equal sign, but instead of an equal sign, we're going to have an inequality symbol. Okay, so it says one variable inequalities are graphed on a number line, just like I kind of gave you an example. But two variable inequalities are graphed on a coordinate plane. So when you graph these, you are going to graph them just like you would a normal line, but then there's two extra things we're going to add to it. So the first thing that you're going to do is determine the y-intercept and the slope. And I'm just going to remind you of our equation y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is our y-intercept. So we're going to use these same techniques to graph these lines as we have before. Okay, so we are going to plot a point at the y-intercept. That's our first step. And then from the y-intercept, we're going to use the slope to move up or down, left or right. That is the same thing that we've been doing. Okay. The new part is we call them boundary lines and the shading. This is, I think it's kind of fun. So there are 4 different types of symbols. These ones, notice they do not have a line underneath of them, and these ones do. Okay. This just means greater than or less than, and then the ones below it is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. So if it does not have the line underneath it like these ones do, you are going to make a dashed line. And this will make more sense when we do them. If it does include the line underneath, that includes any point that's on that line. So this is going to be a solid line. I almost wrote salad. A salad line. Okay. Then we are going to shade above or below this line that we're going to graph. So if inequality has a greater than or equal to, or just a greater than symbol, you are going to shade above. The other word that I like to think about is up. We're going to shade up from that line. And then if it's opposite, if it's less than or equal to or less than, we are going to shade below. Or we can think of that as down. Okay. To double check to see if you shaded the right way, you can test a point in the area to make sure that it's a solution of the given inequality. And why do we shade? Because this is not just an equal sign. It includes lots of answers. So an inequality doesn't have one answer. So shading shows all the possible answers. So there's going to be lots of ordered pairs that make this true. And I'll show you what that means. Okay, so we've got a couple here that we're going to do together. So I don't want you to be overwhelmed with the new things. Let's just start with what we know. So we know that this is the slope-intercept form. We know that this -3 is our starting point because that's the y-intercept. So I'm going to go to my graph and I'm going to put a -3 on my graph. I'm going to start at -3, -3. My slope tells me where to go to my next point. So remember that 1/2 is the rise over the run. So that means I'm going to go up 1, right 2, 1, 2. Up 1, right 2. Once you have a couple points on there.
Up 2 over 2.
You can use a straight edge. Now, if you look back at our directions, they said if it's a solid, if it has a line underneath it, it's going to be a solid line. So this line is going to be solid. So you've just done one of the new parts where we determined if it was going to be solid or dotted. Okay, so now we have to decide, are we going to shade above or below this line? Now this says y is less than. So that means less than, it means we're going to shade below. Now this graph is pretty simple because you can tell that this side is going to be below and this side is above, but sometimes they're not as obvious. So one thing that I always say is that this, when you draw a line perpendicular to your line, the arrows are either going to be going down or going up. And we want these to be going down.
I thought you have to like shade.
Well, we will. So that's kind of how I start. And then I'm just going to use my highlighter to shade this area. And just color with your pencil, however you want.
Ta-da. Watch what you're doing.
Okay. So if you were doing your next one, remember if there's just a negative there, there's really a -1. Okay, so your graph starts at +6. Remember, if it's a whole number, you just put it over 1. So this is going to go down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. And then you have to determine, is this going to be a solid or a dotted line?
Dotted.
Dotted, and it's dotted because there is no line underneath it. So this one, you just kind of make a dashed or dotted, however you want to call it. So I just kind of go through and make dashes. You just want to make sure that whoever was correcting your graph would be able to tell.
I just put a straight line.
Okay, now we have to determine, are we going to shade above the line or below? Above, because this is y is greater than. So I'm going to shade above. So when I draw those lines perpendicular to my graph line, they are going up.
We have to put the arrows.
You don't have to. I mean, if you're comfortable just shading, that's totally fine. I'm just was showing you what it means, kind of.
Well, I'm confused. Like, how do we know to shade it to the side?
Okay, so actually, before we go to the next page, what I'm going to have you guys do is
That was all the notes?
we're going to do some together. Don't worry. Okay, so Jacob, could you give me a point that's in this yellow shaded region? Could you just give me coordinates of a point? That's all you have to do. -6, -2. Okay. -6, -2. So this is what you could do if you, oh, sorry. Negative, how about +6? +6, -2. How's that work? Okay, because I don't think -6, -2 would not be in the area. Okay, so we want to make sure that we shaded correctly. So what you can do is you can take a point in your shaded region. So we just picked one right here. And we're going to see if it makes my equation true. So y is -2. X is 6. So 1/2 times 6 is 3. What's 3 minus 3? 0. Is -2 less than or equal to 0? Is that a true statement? Yeah. So if when you put it in, it comes out true, that means you shaded the right way.
Wait.
That's a
what?
quick way to check your answer.
How do you know -2?
Think like I like to think of a number line. You know that -2, or like a thermometer, -2 is smaller, -2 is colder than
Oh.
0. That's the best way to think about it, I think. Okay, so let's do number 2. Ava, would you pick a number in this shaded region? Or a point, an ordered pair? Okay, perfect. So she did 8, 8. That's right there. Okay, so now I'm going to put that in. So 8 goes in for my y. 8 goes in for my x. So notice I put that negative out in front though. -8 plus +6 gives me a -2. Is 8 greater than -2?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, wait.
it is. 8 is bigger than -2. So that means, yes, we shaded the right way. If it would come out false and you shaded that direction, that would be wrong then. Okay.
So if it said like -8 is greater than 2, yeah, then it'd be wrong.
That'd be wrong. Okay. So your notes are pretty short. And so what I would like to do is I would like to do 3 problems from your homework with you. Actually, I'll do 4.
Let's do
Okay.
16.
So I will say that last hour they did ask for number 6, and I think that's a good one for us to do together. Do you guys want to pick another one from 1 through 8 to do together?
7.
There's 2 pages. Yep.
Number 7. 7.
Okay.
Definitely
7. Okay, so number 6 and 7. And then what about on the other page?
Oh, we're down already.
I'll do 4 problems with you. Yep.
Number 6.
Okay, number 6.
Number 2.
Number 2. Well, number 6 and 2 are very similar, so you might want to have me do
8. 8.
Yeah, do Bradley's.
You guys are saying all different numbers, so
8.
9, 7.
okay. So if you start with number 6, notice that 1, 2, 3, 4 are all in slope-intercept form, but number 5, 6, 7 are not. So the first thing we have to do is we do have to get y by itself. Okay, so we need to get y alone so we can graph it. Okay, so we have to get y by itself. There's a couple different ways to do so. My preferred way when I have a negative y is to add it. Now I know it feels like we're moving it to the wrong side, but this will make it nicer in the end. Okay. One more step to get y by itself. How would I move this -5 to the other side?
Add.
Add it. Yep. So what happens here is we get rid of all of our not friendly negative numbers. So I have 2x plus 5 is greater than or equal to y. Now, if this bugs you, the way that this is written, you can flip the entire equation around, but you have to be careful, okay? So before we just had an equal sign in here, well, now we have to make sure that this symbol,
Now it flips the other way.
yep, it flips the other way because the little side has to be towards the y. But then we can rewrite it this way, and that does make it more normal for us. So now that you have this, you start at the 5. So I'm doing one that is a little bit harder, okay? And then if you have a slope of 2, remember it's over 1. So I go up 2, 1, 2, over 1, up 2, over 1. Okay, so now we have our line graph. We need to decide, is this going to be a solid line or a dotted line? And it's solid because we have a line underneath the inequality. So we're going to make this a solid line.
You're going really fast.
Okay, so we've got our line. We determined if it's solid. The next step is to determine, are we going to graph below or above the line?
Below.
Good work. And we know it's below because it says y is less than. So I like to draw my little arrows, and then I like to shade.
I'm confused on how you know it's like above and below.
You, if it's eating the y, it's
Above.
above, and
Yep.
if it's not, then it's below. I was confused.
Y kind of is our shaded region.
Leave it all to me.
Okay. So that is your final answer. Now, number 7 is very similar. We need to get y by itself. And note that I have a negative 2y. So what would be something that you think I would do? Got the right idea, but if you minus it, it's just going to become more negative.
Add.
So you're going to add it. Yep, because we want to cancel them out, remember? So we're going to add 2y. Okay, so I end up with 3x is greater than 2y. And then remember, I still have to get y by itself.
Wait,
So
what?
you got to split these two up. So whenever you're going to split something up, we're going to use division.
Divide by 2.
Yep.
Both sides.
So I end up with 3 halves x is greater than y. Now, a lot of you might not like it like this. So you can flip-flop your whole equation. So I'm going to write the y on the right or the left side, the 3 halves x on the left or on the right side. But make sure you flip your inequality. So the little end has to be towards the y.
You mean away from the y?
The opening is away from the y, but I'm just like looking at the little point. The point has to be towards the y. However you think about it,
I was thinking of this.
the open end. That's okay.
It's gonna
Okay, so remember, if it doesn't have a y-intercept, where does it start?
1.
Well, not 1.
0.
0. So we're going to start at 0, 0. It's a positive 3 halves, so I go up 3, 1, 2, 3, over 2, 1, 2. And then is this going to be a solid or dotted line?
Well, that's not dotted.
Yep, one of those. It's going to be dotted.
Yeah, Solid, that is not dotted.
Okay, so
The fence things or whatever.
it's going to be a dotted line. Now, is this shaded below or above?
Above.
Oh, is y,
It's above.
no, is y bigger than or is y less than? Y is less than.
Did you get that on your video?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, so even if
Okay, so we are shading below. Okay, so those are just like we did in our notes. Now the two that are going to be different are going to be when they give us the graph, we have to do the opposite. We've got to write the equation. I really like number 6. It's similar to number 2. Remember, these are our special cases. So it only crosses one axis. What axis does the number 6 cross?
the Y.
The x-axis. So it does not, this is the y is our vertical axis. It only crosses the x-axis and it crosses it at -7 right here. So what this means is that we're going to have the x and we're going to have a -7. Now we know that it's a dotted line, but you have to determine, is the shaded region, is it bigger than -7 or small, or less than? Greater than or less than? What do you think?
Like, what do you mean? Less
Well,
than?
like look at our numbers. -6, -2, 0, 2, 4, 6.
Less than?
Are these bigger numbers than -7 or are they
They're smaller.
Bigger.
bigger? They are greater than -7. So this is your equation. X is greater than -7. 6 is greater than -7. 0 is greater than a -7. Think of it as temperature.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, you could've
So
told me
it would
that
just
before I
be-
blurted out the wrong answer.
wait, so then how would it be?
So number 2 is very similar, but it's not crossing the x-axis, it's crossing the
Y.
y-axis.
Y
And is it going above or is it going below?
below.
Below. Okay.
Is
Okay.
this above or below? What is that?
Well, this is greater than.
What is
Yep. So
Above or
it's
below?
it's still great. I would say it's above. It's still greater than. It's above -7. Okay. So then when you have a normal line, you need to find the slope and you need to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept, you can just look, where does it cross the axis? And it crosses at 2. And then our slope, you can use it. They have been giving you 2 points. This one, I think I went down 2 and I went over 16.
That's a lot.
Okay. But I found out that this line is perfect right here too. So it's really 1/8. So it's -1/8 for your slope.
negative?
Yep, because I went down 1, right 8,
Oh,
and it's going downhill. Okay, so now we're gonna have an equation of this line. I know that it's gonna look like y blank something -1/8 x plus 2. This is where you're gonna put your inequality. So is y, did we shade above or below the line?
Below.
Below, so that means y is less than. Did we shade, or is our line solid or dotted?
Solid.
Solid, that means we put a line underneath the symbol. And that's your answer.
That's
wait, so it's always gonna be Y whatever?
Yes.
It's never gonna be X unless if it's